In the quiet town of Rendeville South, Texas, life followed its slow and predictable course. The mornings were accompanied by the song of birds, the rustling of leaves from old trees, and the clinking of coffee cups at the town's only cafe, the Rendeville Cafe. The residents were few and everyone knew each other by name. Children played on the dirt streets, and adults went about their routines with the typical tranquility of a small town. Everything was calm, serene, until everything changed on a cold autumn morning. On that particular morning, a thick fog covered the streets of Rendeville South, giving the day a ghostly air. The cold breeze carried an omen, as if the very air was warning of something dark about to happen. The inhabitants, used to the mild weather, were restless, but they didn't know why. It was in this setting that a new postman appeared. Suddenly, as if he had emerged from the fog, John Marlowe, the new postman, wore an immaculate black uniform, which was unusual in itself, as previous postmen wore light blue uniforms. He seemed out of place, almost spectral. His gaze was vacant, as if he were looking beyond everyday reality. His movements were meticulously calculated, as if each step were part of a macabre choreography. His rigid posture and the way he held the mailbag suggested military discipline, but there was something more, something disturbing. Marlowe began his route without saying a word, only slightly nodding to those who watched him. The first person to receive a correspondence was Mrs. Thompson, the elderly lady who lived on the corner of the main street. She opened the door with a welcoming smile, but her expression changed upon facing Marlowe. Her eyes met his, and she felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine. "Good morning, ma'am," said Marlowe, his voice surprisingly soft, almost a whisper. He handed her a small envelope, and without waiting for a response, turned and continued his walk. Mrs. Thompson stood in the doorway, looking at the envelope with hesitation before opening it. Inside, she found an old photograph of a funeral she didn't remember taking. The days that followed were equally strange. Marlowe delivered packages and letters that brought discomfort and fear to the recipients. Emily, the local school teacher, received a package containing a porcelain doll with hollowed eyes, an exact replica of a doll she had lost in childhood under tragic circumstances. Sheriff Tom Williams found a gun in his package, an old pistol recognizable as the same used in an unresolved crime that had haunted the town for decades. It wasn't just Marlowe's appearance that drew attention, but the strange aura that surrounded him. Wherever he went, the temperature seemed to drop, and the sounds of the environment became muffled, as if the world around was holding its breath. Something was wrong, and the inhabitants of Rendeville South could feel it. Each of Marlowe's deliveries unearthed long-buried secrets, fears that had never been confronted, and the sense that something terrible was about to happen. John Marlowe's presence turned the peaceful town of Rendeville South into a place of fear and distrust. The residents, once united by bonds of friendship and community, began to isolate themselves, fearing what they might discover in their own dark histories. And thus, the arrival of the new postman marked the beginning of a series of events that would forever change life in Rendeville South.